It seems the underlying common theme for Tennessee is their inconsistency in controlling the controllable and executing on the fundamentals. Tennessee tight end Miles Kitselman says when he reflects back on the week leading up to Georgia, he realizes maybe he wasn't as honed in on the details as he thought. I'm Paige Dower. This is the Field Pass on Full Disclosure. Now, the times when it's most obvious that Tennessee isn't doing ordinary things at a high level, as Josh Heupel would say, are those pre-snap penalties, missed blocks or tackles, and then miscommunication. A number of times, one or all of those compounded on single plays. We saw specifically pre-snap penalties and missed tackles happen a lot together, namely at the end of the first quarter against Georgia. It's a 3rd and 8 with 16 seconds to go. Georgia's at their own 27-yard line. James Pierce Jr. has a neutral zone infraction that gives Carson Beck and the Dogs a free play. They go downfield to Leavitt. He gets the reception, and just as he gets the reception, Andre Turntine, Jermon McCoy, they're right there to either get a PBU or make a really solid tackle. Instead, they kind of just drop the shoulder, Leavitt bounces off of them, and explodes for a 38-yard play, flips the field, and now 6 plays later, they get a Georgia touchdown. So you have a pre-snap penalty and a missed block that leads to explosive plays for the offense for Georgia. 11 explosive plays went for 257 yards for Georgia's quarterback and Carson Beck. Not being able to make those quick decisions, and I know it's tough when you have to decide, like, am I going to play the ball? Am I going to play the man? And Josh Heupel, when I asked him, he's like, well, it's a ball-me-man relationship, and it's a player making a play, and you have to decide in that moment, do I need to go make a play in the ball or the person, or just try and make a tackle?
Competitive plays that they made, which you play good teams, that's going to happen too. And then there's some things, could be our eyes, on the snap, whatever it might be, where we're just a little bit out of position. And some of those things are what I was talking about as far as how we can be better and control our controllables.
It's okay to have those losses when maybe the other team just made one extra play, came down to the final quarter. But when it actually turns out that on offense, Tennessee wasn't able to do anything in the second half, and for much of the game, Tennessee's defense took an uncharacteristic kind of night off or was just a little bit dulled against the Georgia offense, then you start to question and really start to take like that magnifying glass to what was going on. And when you look at the game and, the 9 penalties that they had, where they're averaging 7.9 a game, so they only got 1 more penalty than what their average would tell you. And then they're giving up 106 yards on the ground, continuing to have teams that are playing above what their season average would tell you. They got gashed in the pass defense and in the pass game. So there's all these things where it's like, I expected a loss or maybe would be okay with the loss, but I didn't think it'd look like that. And Josh Heupel says a lot of the time it's because they were self-inflicted mistakes or errors that happened. And again, getting back to that message that there were too many moments in the game against Georgia where Tennessee was hurting Tennessee.
Myself included, just skipping over those little details, especially as we've been on a little win streak here. I didn't do a good enough job of holding myself and holding my teammates accountable to those little details that caught up with us on Saturday.
Anticipating or expecting or wasn't able to adjust to the motion that they were seeing from Georgia. And then you look at the tackles or the lack thereof. There were only 52 total tackles from Tennessee's defense in this game. That is a season low for Tennessee's defense. Amari Thomas will say, the defensive lineman, he's like, they threw in wrinkles. We didn't see, one against Ole Miss who was really able to disrupt the Georgia offense. So they threw in wrinkles we weren't expecting. He says it was hard to adjust to that, but they have to be better. And one, it's just a really good team in Georgia, so you do have to tip your cap to them. But then when we hear from linebackers coach William N., she says, there was a lot of motion that they were throwing at us. It did deceive us. Our eyes were out of place. So then that gets us out of position. And when that happens, he describes it as a false step. You step in the wrong way, equalizes the matchup now because Georgia has you right where they want you. And he says a lot of the time it was hard for them to kind of get their eyes in the right spot. And that is one of the details that they need to get back to.
It would equalize them to where if I took one false step to the left and I'm supposed to go to the right, now it gives an offensive lineman or person one more step on me, and they're in front of me getting there instead of me being in front of them. So that's what some of the misdirection things lead to, and that's what we work on from a day-to-day basis. It always starts with our eyes, feet, hands, shoulders, and eyes. Those are the 5 things that we work from a linebacker standpoint on a day-to-day basis, and we call it the 5-5.
There's still so much to play for, and that attention to detail that Miles Kitselman says they need to have that accountability heading into to UTEP and then heading into Vanderbilt, so that when they do get their shot at potentially playing in the playoffs, they've spent a couple of weeks working on those details that will get the magnifying glass to it once the playoffs come to town. So a lot to talk about with Tennessee football Friday. It's a day that we're going to talk about Senior Day, salute to service. We heard from Brew McCoy, and he just had so many great things to say about how Tennessee really has turned into his home. And they both, Brew McCoy and Miles Kitselman, say that the film room and locker room is really probably what they're going to miss most. So we'll talk about that a lot on Friday. And then coming up Wednesday, it's the Lady Ball basketball team, and what one LVFL says really reminds her about her time at Tennessee, and it's quite the compliment. And we'll talk about that on Wednesday at around 2:30. 2:45. Thursday, it is a preview on Vol Hoops ahead of their classic in the Bahamas as they get ready to take on the Virginia Cavaliers. So we have a lot on the docket this week at Full Disclosure. Make sure to subscribe, turn on those notifications. I have so appreciated all of your engagement up until this point, and I really hope it continues and continue to deliver the stories you guys have been enjoying up until this point. But I'm going to go head on down to Vol Hoops for practice later today. I'll also have that on the channel later this afternoon, but I'll talk to you guys on Wednesday.